Okay. Hi, Lakan. This is your English exam. Okay? So let's start with the poem Begin by Rumi. What do you think it is about?
Um, it's like make most of your time on Earth, or something
Mm-hmm.
like makes your time on Earth, or something you have to do with, like if if someone's gonna give you a super cool toy, and then you have to make your time out of it and use it all the time until the time's done, or
Okay.
something. That's what I think it means.
Can you recite it?
Okay, begin by Rumi. This is now. Now is. Don't postpone to then. Spend the spark of iron on stone. Just sit at the head of the table. Dip your spoon in the bowl, and seat yourself next to your joy, and have your awakened soul pour wine. Branches in the spring wind, easy dance of jasmine and cypress. Cloth for green robes has been cut from pure absence. You're the tailor, quiet, sitting amongst his shop goods, quietly sewing.
Wow. Great. Amazing. Okay. You said in the whiteboard you said what you think it means is to enjoy life.
Yeah, me too. I think that too.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. It's like like when it says spend the spark of iron on stone. It's like spend the most of your time on something, or I don't know why, but it just makes me think that you have to enjoy something, like enjoy a song. I mean, enjoy your life.
Mm-hmm. Why a song? Okay. All right. Okay. Next. Thank you. Next. Grimm's Fairy Tales. So, we've been doing evening read alouds before bedtime, right? Yes. So, we're reading from Grimm's Fairy Tales. And can you tell me, or can you retell a story that we've read?
One of my favorites is the Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, why? Why is it your favorite?
I don't know.
Okay, tell me about it.
So first there was this little girl that her mother baked cookies, and her grandma was sick.
Mm-hmm.
So she was gonna give cookies to her so she could try and feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gave her a cloak. It was red. Then she said, be safe, Little Red Riding Hood. And she was like, okay. And then on her way, there was a little wolf. There was a big wolf.
Little wolf or big wolf?
It was a big wolf.
Oh, okay.
And then there was a big wolf that said, he said, come on, Little Red Riding Hood. Then she was frightened because she met a big wolf. Then the big wolf said, follow this way. follow this way so you can you follow this way. I think it's a faster way. And then she said, okay. But she found flowers on her way. And then she started picking up all the flowers. And that made her slower. And then while she was picking up flowers, she was like, the wolf noticed her cookies and he wanted it. Then he said, who are those cookies for? Then she said, it's for my grandmother. It's for my grandmother. Then he was like, I want those cookies. So he said, go to that part. So she was picking up flowers for her grandmother. And then he was like, I'm just going to go disguise as her grandmother. So he went there. And then when he went there, he knocked on the door and the grandmother was like, come and give me. And then suddenly he ate the grandmother up. But he didn't chew her. He swallowed her. That's how hungry he was. He swallowed her in one gulp. Now she was just in the tummy waiting.
Must have been very big.
Yeah, that's why I said the big wolf. And then when she came, she said, grandmother, can you I'm here. And then the wolf opened the door, and then she said, here's some cookies, grandmother. And then she said, okay. And then she was like, oh my, what big ears you have. And then she was like this, all the better to hear you with, darling. And what big eyes you have, all the better to see you with, darling. What big body you have, all the better to hug you with. What big teeth you have, all the better to eat you with. And then he gobbled her up. And then there was a man with a gun. And then he saw him eat her up. And then he waited till he fell asleep. And then while he was sleeping, he cut off the belly, and up came the grandmother in the Red Riding Hood.
Oh no.
And then he filled his tummy up with rocks. Then he stitched it up. And then when he was awake, he felt so heavy because all the rocks were in his stomach. And then he fell down the well, dead. Because the rocks were too heavy. And I think the man shot him. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, very good. Why do you think the man could cut the wolf in half and then sew him back?
He didn't cut him in half. He did the belly only.
Oh, just the belly.
Yeah, in the belly.
Okay. So the wolf would still be alive?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's just a story, right?
Yes.
All right. Very good. So let's go to another book that we read aloud before bedtime. The Wizard of Oz. Okay. Tell what the story is about.
I only read
Just
chapters.
Just what you know so far.
So first there was once a country. I don't know which country it is, and then the clouds were so gray, and also there was this aunt and a man. They were family, And then they adopted this girl called Dorothy. And then the dog went with them. And the dog was named, what's the dog's name again? I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dog was there too. And their house was very tiny. And the skies were so gray. And their dog was a black dog. And I forgot the black dog's name.
Okay.
And then suddenly there was this one time the man was not really that happy all the time. He was always grumpy. but Dorothy made Aunt something, I forgot her name, smile.
Mm-hmm.
But one time he was like, the clouds are gray. The man said that. And then Aunt something, I forgot all of their names. They said, it's always been gray. Then he was like, no, it's gray than usual. And then he looked closely into the field. And then he was like, a cyclone coming in, and the cyclone is bigger than a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a tornado but bigger. And then they were like, get in that. There's this one little hatch in the middle of the room, and you had to go under it to go to a safe place. And then Aunt something went in first, and then she was underground. And then when Dorothy was about to go there too, the cyclone picked the house up and made it out. So the aunt and the man were just there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the house was like growing up with Dorothy in it and the puppy too. And then they kept going on and on and on. Then she kind of got bored and used to it. But the puppy did, but the dog didn't get used to it. He didn't like it at all, and it was always like that. And then suddenly, it landed.
Mm.
And then suddenly it landed in a place called Munchkin Land,
Mm-hmm.
where the Munchkins live. And then, there was this woman. There was this witch. She was a good witch. She was a nice witch, and she said there was a white lady or three men behind her, one at her right, one at her left, and one at the back of her. The men were black, and they were shorter, and the girl was white, and she was tall. So they walked at Dorothy, and then they said, "Thank you for killing the witch of the east." And then she was very confused. And then she said, "I have never killed anyone in my whole entire life." And she's like, "How could I possibly kill them when my house just landed here?" And then she's like, "There." And then she saw the house on top, and then she saw legs under, and then the legs were just sticking out.
Okay.
And and it was green skin, and it was silver boots. And then she said, "I'm so sorry for killing her." And then she was like, "No, it's fine. Because we like thank you for killing her." And then when they were talking, one of the men was like, "Ah, look!" And then when they saw it, it was only the boots left because the sun was so hot that her skin even faded away, and only the silver things were left.
Mm.
And then she said, "Here, have her boots." And then she said, okay. And then she's like, but this is not mine. And she was like, it's fine. And then when she got the silver boots, then she walked with it. And then but she said, have you ever, and the place where she lived in was called Kansas. And then she was like, can you help me get back to Kansas? Then the white woman was like, what's that? I never heard of a place called Kansas or something. Then she said, it's my homeland. It's where I came from. Then she was like, oh, okay. And then she was like, probably you could go to the Great Wizard of Oz. His name's Oz. Then she was like, okay, can he send me back there? And she was like, yeah, he can. And so she was like, can you help me go to there? And she's like, it is a very long journey. You'll have to go there on foot. And I will not be with you. I have some work to do. Then she's like, please don't. Then she hugged at her and cried, as she was her only friend there. And then she's like, you'll be okay. Just ask him. Then she went off. And then while on her way, she passed over a barn. And on that barn, there was a scarecrow hanging up there. And when she was walking past the farm and the scarecrow was up there, and he was like, hey, can you get me out there? Out of here. And then she was very frightened because she never heard a scarecrow talk. Because in her land, the scarecrow was her scarecrows were always just like hanging there, scaring the crows away. But that one talked. And then she was like, hey, how do you talk? And then he was like, can you get me out of here? And then she was like, okay. And then when he get her out of there, then she was like, do, 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 do. And then they were there. They were just walking on the yellow brick road. Then they were like, are you afraid of anything? Do you feel anything? She was like, nope. I do not think of anything, or I don't have any emotions. Then he always kept falling and going back up, and then he didn't even feel tired, or he didn't even feel a thing. And then he was like, I have no brain, because if he had a brain, he would stop going over the thing. He would always go over there. But since he has no brain, he just walks into it, falls in, and then he always climbs back up in the pots and holes. And then he was like, I wish I could ever have a brain. And then he's like, why don't you come with me to the Great Oz? He might give you some brains. And she was like, oh, perhaps I could get some brains. And then he was like, yeah. And then when he went with them to get some brains, on their way, she was like, are you afraid of anything? Then she said, nope. Wait, she said, are you afraid of anything? Let me guess. Is it the person who made you? And he was like, nope. Then he was like, here's my secret. I'm afraid of a little fire. And if it sets on me, I will die. Because he's made out of straw, and his brain is made out of straw, because he's a scarecrow. And then...
So he has a brain?
No.
Oh, okay.
He has no brain. That's why he wants brains. And that's why he sets on the adventure with Dorothy. And then Dorothy says, okay, you can come with me, but how did your story start? Then he was like, oh, this is how it happened. So first, the man who made me, he made my head, and then he started painting my eyes. Then I watched him paint my other eye, that I could see better. Then he painted my nose, and then my mouth, and then my ears, and then he stuffed my head with straw,
Okay.
and then he made my body, painted some stuff on it, then got the arms out of straw, almost everything on straw, and then he hanged me, and then the other guy was like, that surely will scare the crows away. And at night there was crows going there, but then they got scared because they thought it was the man who was guarding all night there. But there was one that came closely and then said to him, "Oh, we thought you were a man. Well, you don't scare us." But when he scared them, he felt very, very happy. But since he didn't scare him anymore, he felt not special, and then he felt what was his life, and then he didn't know what to do. And then the next morning, Dorothy came there. That's how it happened. And then on their journey, they also heard they heard chopping, and then they're like, "What's that?" Then when they came closely, they saw a tin man, and then he was stuck in a position like this. Then he couldn't move, and then she's like, "Hello." Then he's like, "Hi, would you please oil me?" And then she was like, "It's in the cottage." Then they got the cottage, and they went to a cottage that was nearby, and they found the oiling thing. Then they oiled all around him. Then he felt better. Then he was like, that's a good stretch. I never had this in years. And then he was like, "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" Then he was like, "I saw lots of people pass by, but they didn't help me. But certainly you did." And then he was like, "I wish to have my heart again." And then he was like, why do you want to have your heart again?" "Because I remember the ones who I loved." And then he said his story. And then the story first was he was chopping off some wood, and then suddenly he accidentally chopped off his leg. But a man who was selling tin made a tin leg for him. Then he chopped off his other leg that was not made out of tin. Then he had both legs out of tin. And then he chopped off his arms, 2 arms at the same time. And then he could move. And then he had 10 arms, both 10 arms. And then I suddenly cut off my head. Accidentally.
Accident.
He said accident.
Okay.
And then he thought it was the end for him, but it was not the end actually. So he kept, and then the tin guy made a head for him. So weird. And then suddenly now it was the end. He chopped his body in half.
What?
And then he liked a Munchkin girl, but when he asked to marry her, she wanted to, but there was this old grandmother that didn't want her to stay. She didn't want her to go away, and she wanted her to stay with her and do chores and live with her. And so she couldn't, but he still loved her. But then when he chopped off this part, and then he made a tin body back, but he felt no more love for the Munchkin girl. So and then he wants some hearts back. So then Dorothy said, "Probably you could go to Oz with us. He could give you some hearts." And then he was like, "Oh, okay." And on their way, they met there was a very big roar, and then the dog was like, he barked at the Scarecrow and the Tin Man. At the first place, he did not like them, but now he was getting used to them. But and then he was barking so loudly at the roar, like that. And then but suddenly when he went out, and then he started running back because a huge roar went like sounded like a lion's roar. And then he was about to eat. Oh, his name was Toto. Toto.
Okay, great.
The dog's name was Toto.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, I'm gonna eat. He was about to eat Toto, and then Dorothy was like, he was so scared, but she was like, she went up to him and slapped the nose so hard, and then she was like, you are a big cowardly lion. And then he started crying, and then she was like, I am a cowardly lion. When all the other tigers or bears try to run and fight me, I always run away and go home. And then he was like, I wish I could be braver. But if I roar, the roar is only the thing that makes me happy. Because when I roar, people start running away. I don't know why. Like when I roared to this man, and then he started running away that his life was about to end.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I roared at rabbits, it ran so fast that I couldn't see them in 3 seconds or something. And then she was like, oh, really? Sorry. And then she was like, it's okay. And then she was like, would you like to go on an adventure with us? Then he was like, no thanks. And then she's like, okay. Well, I wish I could have a little more courage. And then she's like, oh, well, we are setting off to adventure for the Scarecrow to have brains, the Tin Man to have a heart, and for me to get back to Kansas and with my dog Toto. And then she's like, well, do you think Oz could give me courage? Then she was like, yes, he can. Then he's like, okay, then I'm coming with you. And then that's the story. That's
So far.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing retelling. Amazing.
It was so long.
But you kept me interested. That's good. Okay. So, who is your favorite among the characters that you've met so far?
Probably Tin Man.
Why?
Because he's made out of tin, and I don't know how she survived when he cut off his head.
Yeah.
And he still survived when he chopped his heart in half,
Right.
and his lungs in 2 parts.
Yeah.
Like lungs you hear.
Yeah. Oh, I have a question for you. Which do you think is more important? Having a brain or a heart? And why?
I would probably have. I want both, and I do have both, but I don't know why. I want a brain is for you could think and you could walk and learn how to stuff, but a heart is like where you love and the heart pumps to make the blood flowing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think that one is more important than the other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of them are both so equally nice. You need a heart and you need a brain.
Alright. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's it for your English exam.